Hello, everybody. So I was told I have a spare 2 minutes, so we're going to start with something here. Everybody stand up. All right. We heard on one of the panels earlier on longevity that human connection is so very, very important to our health. So you have 3 options. All of the options are fantastic. One is you hug the person next to you. The other is that you shake hands. And the other is you could just acknowledge them and give them a smile, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'd go for the first option, but that's up to you, so let's do that. All right, you can sit down. Good job. So, now that we've spent all that time hugging, I have almost no time left. So I'm only going to give you one example of generative AI with health, but I just want to give you a taste of what's about to come so that you can and it'd be great if you can, after, just tell me all the other options and things that we can do with it, because it's amazing what's about to change. So, me and my co-founder, Pete, put your hand up. So we come from a completely different world than, science or AI. Pete made one of the first social networks. I made a dating app called Badoo that got quite large. Neither of us were in the health tech space, right? Then something happened. Pete's dad had a stroke out of the blue, killed his quality of life. I had a relative find out stage 4 about cancer. And unfortunately, when you have those experiences, as I know many of you in the audience have had, you learn the adage that if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, and you learn that very quickly, and it's true. And so that made us try to discover how we could use our skill set to actually help. And we came up with Humanity. And so Humanity is an app that allows you to monitor your rate of aging and guides you to slow it down. Our mission is to add 1 billion years of health back to the world. So that's healthy years that you can spend with your family, your friends, everything that we love doing. So we wanted to bring this out, just like the dating app, just like the social network, we wanted this to be for everybody. And so we wanted to take that longevity science and bring it out to everybody. And so the app, it has APIs, but the app you can download if you have iPhone, will be on Android soon. And it allows you to actually find out what will make you healthier and live longer. And just for the nihilists, sometimes we have a nihilism that no one's going to change their behavior. We already show that people, you can see when they sign up, you can see what they did before, and people do change their behavior when you give them a feedback loop. It works with Instagram, it works with Humanity, it works with health. So now let's get to the science and AI part of this, right? And so when we were thinking about what we could do with Humanity, we met with and had the kindness of a lot of researchers, a lot of scientists, that at the time, I don't even know why they were giving us so much time, but they were kind to do so. But what you learn when you talk to scientists, and if there's any scientists or researchers in the room, you put your hand up. Yeah, there's a few. Nice. Usually, even the most famous ones, they spent 90% of, you find out when you actually get their full story, they spent 90% of their time collecting the data, getting the data, and then only 10% of the time coming up with the breakthrough, right? So I want you guys to go with me in a thought experiment. This is actually what I believe, but let's just, if you don't believe it, let's suspend that disbelief. All the data that we need to answer all the health questions we've ever had is on Earth today in servers. It's there. All the questions we've ever had, it's there right now on Earth, and so is the technology to model it. And let's look at the negative side of this, is that lack of access to that data is literally killing people. Every single second, a person's dying because we're not getting access to that data, and that needs to change. And let's relate this to another thing. And this is, I want to give a shout out to Helene, who runs a company called Wild.ai. And so she has a sports performance app for females that actually, finally takes into account, their cycles and everything that makes their bodies unique. And so in research, females were basically forgotten for years and years and years, but we have that data on Earth today, tons of female data, right? And so this won't be a shocking statement to you if you've gone to almost any presentation in the Web Summit today. So generative AI has taken over the world. It's basically available near free. It's getting better every day. This one might be a little bit more new to you. So generative AI is actually about to make a ton of health data open in the world and a ton of health information. Basically, it will be completely ubiquitous. It will be everywhere. Everybody will have access to it. So I want to walk you through, so in a past life, I skipped over it, but I ran the largest consumer VPN in the world. So privacy is very deeply ingrained in me. And the obvious thing that probably, hopefully, was going through some of your guys' heads when I kept on talking about opening up data is, wait a second, that data's private, I want it to stay private, and you're absolutely right. And so I want to walk you through, there's a Google team. It's a great example of like the possibilities here. So what you do is, you have the original data, and then you do the usual stuff that GDPR and everything would tell you to do. You anonymize it. But that's just the first step. The next step is you actually train in an autoencoder, and you get the latent space. I still think that's a horrible name for what it is, but it's basically all the information that was contained inside that data, but not the original data. So basically, if you have a 2 and a 5, you basically have that there was a space of 3. You throw away the 2 and the 5. So you just have the information of how all that data was, related to each other, right? Now here's where the cool thing happens. And again, I'm just giving you a taste, so obviously, it goes deeper. The cool thing happens is then you basically have a GAN. That's where generative AI kind of comes from. A GAN is basically you feed in noise to one side of the system, and then the other side of the system knows something, and then the two systems go at each other until you create a completely new but representative image of the original. So think like a cat photo that was trained on a bunch of cat photos, but it was actually made by a computer. And so what happens is you don't feed in the original data, and this innovation happens every single day, and this was just one piece of it. You don't feed in the original data. You feed in the actual latent space, the actual informational data to that one side. You feed in noise to the other side, and basically you come up with a completely new representation of the informational data, and then you revert it back, and then you have this almost 100% private data. But you can go back. The cool thing is you can actually go back, and we have great techniques to actually check, is this completely new data, or can I reverse engineer it? You go through those checks. Once you get to the point that you have this completely private, safe data, in the past, and if anybody's a data scientist or a chief scientist even I think still to this day, our chief scientist in humanity still questions this a little bit. In the past, it's like, yeah, synthetic data is awesome, it's really useful, but I want the real data because that's what I can train my model on and actually get to the answer I want, right? Now, we're getting to the point that synthetic data is as good as the real data. What's the definition of good? So this Google team, just to use the example, they trained a bunch of representative models. They trained those models on the real data. So that's in the blue on both these charts. And then they trained basically on the synthetic data in the orange. They came to basically exactly the same answers. And this is actually when they first did it. They've done it much better already. And so think of this. You have completely private health information data that actually gets you the same answers. Well, let's call it fake. I think the word synthetic sometimes doesn't trigger us enough. You have completely fake data that holds all the information, none of the original data, so it's completely private, and you're able to train models on it. This is pretty revolutionary. This is a kind of a step that will basically open up all the data. But let me walk you through what we're doing with it. So the idea, if you remember, I talked about Helene and her app, Wild.ai. And so we're humanity. We have our app. And then let's say you have a research study, an academic research study, and they're collecting data too. Each of us, as I noted, we don't want any of our user data going anywhere. It's their data. If they want to delete it, they tell us. We delete it. It's gone. It doesn't get anonymized. It doesn't get sent off anywhere. Usually I do the quotation marks anonymized. It's completely with us. But what happens is if you create this synthetic data, you basically then have this new product. You put it on the other side of the firewall because it doesn't contain any of the user data. But the next step is pretty cool, is you basically then, we will train over Helene's data, our data, synthetic data, any of the other data out there. If you run a health tech app or have a data custodian, would love to talk to you about if you guys want to start proving this to yourself, that it's actually real and you can actually maybe join our proof of concept. And so that's how it all works. So I hit the peak of my Web Summit career when I was working for that consumer VPN, and we're doing a contract for the web with Tim Berners-Lee. He's the guy on the left. Who knows who Tim Berners-Lee is? All right, let's make that number bigger. He's the guy who invented the World Wide Web. He basically created the entire patent and idea for the World Wide Web, not the internet. The internet was basically Vint Cerf and DARPA, and basically they were good information flow between a few different academies and a few different government institutions. Tim came along and said, hey, we can probably make an easy way for everybody on Earth, I don't know if it was 1.5 billion or 2 billion people at the time, can actually interact with this thing. And so the internet you know today would not have existed if it wasn't for this idea of let's allow everybody to interact with it, right? And so it continued to work with Tim. We went to DC. We talked to all the senators. We were fighting for net neutrality. But as I heard him try to explain, unfortunately, had to explain to the senators and Congress people what the internet was sometimes. But when they asked him, what do you think the impact of your invention was? He would repeatedly kind of give the same answer, which was, hey, yeah, Vint Cerf, DARPA, internet, but we thought everybody should interact with it. We thought that's what's going to bring the impact. And so that's what we're looking at with health and with data right now, is yes, me and Pete are me and Pete are brilliant, but we're 2 people. And our team is brilliant, we're a few people. Helene's team, amazing. Oxford, all those professors, fantastic. All of us in this room, fantastic, but we're not 8 billion people, right? We can't get to the impact of if we allowed 8 billion people to interact with something. And so, just like the software industry, I don't know, a lot of people don't talk about it, but basically the software industry is built on open source, right? Microsoft wouldn't exist without open source. It's a foundational layer. Everybody contributes to it. If we do that, it doesn't have to be altruism. We do that because it actually creates the sector, right? And so in the health industry, this is what I see, right? We open up all this this health data information, and we can actually allow everybody to start modeling on it. We can still compete on our models. We can still get paid on our models, but we're going to make the health data free, the health data information, the synthetic data, open for everybody. And so I want to call on everybody to, if you want to join our proof of concept or help us out with it, we'd love to talk to you. Download Humanity, the app, if you want to start slowing down your aging right now. If you find me, we can play a game. If you find me, I'll give you a code to get some premium for free. And yeah, thank you for listening.